The European Union seems to be in trouble again, especially the Eurozone. As we've seen, France and Germany are pushing for a new bond buying program, and certain countries aren't too happy. Today we're going to talk about that with our weekly contributor, Andre Walker. Hello, Andre. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Yeah, good, not bad. I'm not hungover today, so that's good.
I saw a brilliant thing in The Guardian, by the way, complaining about Mike Graham and Julia Hartley-Brewer on Talk Radio. Anyone not listening to Talk Radio by now is way behind the curve.
Really? What's happened?
Well, The Guardian are not happy about the fact that Talk Radio is absolutely zooming ahead of LBC and whatever in terms of the number of listeners they're gaining. So they're kicking off as usual. And they've told off Mike Graham for ripping up The Guardian, I think, on 5 occasions now. But it's all good fun, isn't it?
Wow, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, for those who don't know, obviously Andre is also on Talk Radio, so make sure to tune in when he's on. Let's talk about what's happening, because we have a report and the Express is talking about the Brexit domino effect. The 4 countries tipped to follow the UK out of the EU, potentially. Obviously, there's no guarantee. This is at the end of May. France and Germany announced that they are backing the creation of an EU bond to raise 500 billion euros to boost the economies. And then you got the frugal 4, the Netherlands, Austria, Denmark, and Sweden. Not happy about the situation, and they have warned that this could actually be the beginning of the end for the European Union. What do you think of more centralisation in the Eurozone?
Well, the big argument, of course, in favour of the EU is obviously it's not democratic. But whenever a crisis comes along, they're able to solve it very easily. And yet, time and time again, and recently what's happened in Italy, I think, proves this, the EU is incapable of resolving problems. And I think personally, if these countries were independent, they'd be in a much, much better state. We've seen all of these opinion polls now moving in our direction. And what I've always said is that freedom shouldn't just be for the United Kingdom. We should try and roll it out across the rest of the EU.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of times during the referendum, even afterwards, Remainers thought that when we talk about Brexit, we're just talking about some sort of British superiority or whatever. We said we want Brexit for every country because we've tried your method of centralizing everything. Usually that kind of works when it comes to simplifying everything and creating this United States of Europe to solve the problems. But we've realized because of the different cultures and requirements in every country, it doesn't really work. So the best thing to do is just make every country sovereign and independent and just work together. Do you think this could actually result in some sort of, if not by referendums in general, but the beginning of the end for the EU?
Well, the EU has always claimed to represent European unity. But, even if you look at Scotland, where they say Scotland is so pro-European, hey, 40% of Scottish people, or near enough, voted to leave the EU. The support for the EU in the Republic of Ireland, whilst it's very, very widespread, it's very thin. Basically, they've just had a lot of investment. Iceland has been horrendously bullied. Norway's been horrendously bullied. And so I just think we need to get out of the whole idea where Europe equals the EU. And we've been terrible at it. And I admit it myself. We always equate the EU to Europe. They've won that argument. Whereas actually, if you listen to somebody like Nigel Farage, he supports European cooperation. What he doesn't support is a central European government. And that's what we've got to continue to fight.
I mean, you're right. This is the point of usually the intellectual left being very good with language. They kind of dominate certain words and then just completely win the argument. This is, a perfect example of this whole Europe and EU stuff. Now, we have this news coming from France now, talking about how Macron is panicking, and he said, I don't want to take any bets with any EU referendum because the recent opinion polls have now showed that the majority, just about the majority of the French might vote to leave the EU. I mean, if you were a Europhile prime minister or president in a European country, I get that, your position is to defend your European bloc. But do you not think that if this continues for a few years, like in France, that as politicians, they can't really hold on to this kind of, let's just bring down the democratic side of it. Let's not do any referendums. Do you think there will come a point where even France will be forced to do a referendum?
Well, I heard this. A very good friend of mine who lives around the corner, his partner is French and she's a vehement Eurosceptic. And actually, when she told me what you've just said, I actually didn't believe her, and I had to look it up. I mean, I think the big problem that they've got is they are so blinkered in this idea that this project is absolutely marvellous. And one day we'll realise, the stupid, unwashed, the little guy will realise that we're doing the right thing. And they've never, ever stopped to ask themselves the question, is the reason why this, because it's a really bad idea? They don't do that. And my concern isn't that they'll give France a referendum. My concern is that there'll just be this pressure cooker effect. If you think about it, when we were finally released from the shackles of the European Union, the trouble that happened in Britain as a relatively Eurosceptic country was terrible. Can you imagine in countries, if they're subjugated for another 50 or 100 years, when that pressure cooker pops, it's going to get very nasty indeed.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think I've been saying this for a few years now, that the Europhiles always say the EU are keeping the peace. But in reality, slowly, over the past few decades, they're creating more division. Peace happened after everything that we went through in the 20th century because of initially trade, and every country became a democracy generally. Usually you don't see conflicts between democracies who trade with each other. But then by creating a protectionist anti-trade bloc and then slowly taking away democratic methods in each country, they are making each country less democratic and less pro-trade. So don't be surprised if, in a few years we will have a massive conflict in Europe thanks to Brussels.
But equally, what happened in Georgia and Ukraine was terrible. And you always got the impression that part of the reason that Vladimir Putin was causing trouble in these countries was the EU were desperate to get the clause in. Now, I'm no friend of Vladimir Putin, and certainly I wouldn't say the EU is worse than him.
No.
But what's happening effectively is there's a colonial in a country like Ukraine between the EU and Russia. And I think if the EU left well alone, we would have much more moral authority to tell Russia to leave it alone as well.
Yes. I mean, on the other hand, because you were talking about all these different countries in Europe, and there have been, for a few years, a lot of Eurosceptics in the UK have also said, oh yeah, we can see another Brexit in a sense of like referendum and a leaving from another country easily. I mean, yeah, don't be fooled. What happened in Britain was very, very special because historically, culturally, we were always different, and that's why this was not a kind of like an instant, random, rash decision as a country by the UK. So I don't think we will see an exact example of a Brexit referendum and movement in other countries, but we might actually see at one point even a more right-wing populist leader in some of the countries, and he might just be like, I'm standing on a platform of, if you vote me in, I'll just cancel the membership anyway. So that could happen, or we could have a Eurozone collapsing. Just one last question, because in the Times and the Telegraph they've been talking about how obviously we will leave at the end of December. We might end up getting a skeleton trade deal or no trade deal, but the actual negotiations, detailed negotiations for each area industry could actually go on for years and years, like with Canada and other countries. Do you think we might end up actually having Brexit talks for the next 10 years again?
Well, let's just be clear on one thing. We have had stability in our diplomatic relations across Europe as a result of the EU. Now, that stability, I don't think, has been to the benefit of the UK. But, what you are now seeing in newspapers is debates about bilateral negotiations with the French over fishing and debates over trade tariffs with the Germans. That is part of being an independent country. So I'm relaxed about that. So obviously, the process of negotiating trade deals across the world will be ongoing forever. And so I don't think we need to shy away from that or be nervous about it. The big concern I've got is this obsession with regulatory alignment, which basically means that we continue to take the EU's laws without making the EU's laws. Now, of course, what the pro-Europeans say is, well, we used to make the EU's laws when we were members. No, we didn't, right? They were all made in the European Commission. So I think whilst we have less input now, we don't have a lot less input. As long as we don't have regulatory alignment, we are good to go. But I see the bigger negotiation as being in the United States of America. And where we've got to be careful is if we, as the Conservatives, lose the White House, then I think the trade deal with the US is much more of a dangerous negotiation than it will be with whatever you think about him, Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. And we on the Brexit side were quite afraid of having Hillary Clinton in 2016 as president, because that would have jeopardized the actual Brexit movement overall and the trade deals and how she would have acted as president. She would have been even more protectionist, saying that, oh, we're not going to negotiate with the UK post-Brexit, blah, blah, blah. So that's the fear with Joe Biden as well. Now, last question. When is your birthday?
The 19th of May.
Oh, it's gone now, because I was just going to say, I was going to buy you one of the defund the BBC t-shirts.
What do you mean? You've got to buy it anyway. Right.
Okay.
Get out of it.
I'll get one for you, but for those who don't know, obviously we have our new merchandise. We got the defund the BBC, by definition means cancelling your TV license and watching my Tousi instead. I've received some comments saying that the t-shirts should say cancel your TV license and watch my Tousi. No, the whole point is a definition. It's defining the word. Yeah, so make sure to check out the link in the description. It's limited merch. I think we'll have it for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, so make sure to get yours. And Andre and I will now move to record our weekly video podcast for the members of the channel. It will be a longer version of this. We're going to discuss a lot of things that we can't discuss. The link is in the description. You could go on youtube.com/mytc/join to become a member and have access to that. And any last few words, Andre?
Well, look, I think we need to get more people to join the membership scheme. I mean, it doesn't benefit me, let me tell you. But the thing is, because of the algorithms and because of the way that YouTube works, it's very, very hard for us to have a very fulsome discussion on this short video. I hope people enjoy this video, but let me tell you, the one behind the paywall is way more fruity.
Absolutely. I'll see you guys in the next video.